if you want to be healthy, I think you should more maybe go after Stephen's perennial vegetables rather than grain. But still, grain is also part of it. It's not toxic. It's not that toxic. Okay, I'm the grain man. I started as an organic farmer in 83, 84, about that. And I already from the start, it was seed production. Started with flower seeds and borago. Julekrone was my first crop. I grew 1 hectare with Julekrone. That was interesting. It's not that easy because it was for seed production, and borago has this. When the seed mature, it springs out of the flower and lands on the seed. So having 1 hectare with that was interesting. Anyway, and then after some years, I got more into grain, and for the past many years, I've been working mainly with grain. And grain is somewhat different than perennial vegetables, because we can all grow vegetables, and it makes a lot of sense growing vegetables in our gardens, because you sow the seed, you harvest vegetables, compared to buying your food in a supermarket. It makes actually sense to have a kitchen garden. Also from an economical point of view, you can actually gain something and supply your food. But growing grain in a home garden makes absolutely no sense. It takes a lot of time growing 1 or 10 kilo of grain, and you can buy it for 2 kroner per kilo by a farmer. It makes absolutely no sense. So when I work with grain, it's mainly for commercial production. That means I go into to farming, commercial farming. So my professional work, I orient to commercial farming. So in that case, it's not just a hobby. It is also about money. And this is maybe mainly what I'll be talking about. Well, what Trine was talking about, can this point also? Yes. A little, yes. Is this correlation you see between yield and protein content. If you have a high yield, you will have a low protein content. If you have a high protein content, you will have a low yield. It is as simple as that. And this has been, this is organic trials, and you can increase both yield and protein content by fertilizers. If you apply nitrogen to the field, you will increase the yield and you will also increase the protein content. But that's the only exception. Anything else, if you increase the yield, you will decrease the protein content. And we have this problem that the conventional varieties, they are selected, they are bred for high yield. And that means they have low protein content. But they are bred for conventional conditions, which means 240 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare. And then if you have a new variety, it should be better than the old varieties. And they go from a standard 100. So you can only approve new varieties if they have a yield that is higher than 100% of the standard varieties. So that means, and when you grow these varieties under organic conditions, where you supply less nitrogen, you get a lower protein content. So that means, for example, here, so when an organic farmer grows the standard variety, the protein content will be 10%. That's not enough for baking quality. So that means you're not able to, and this is spring wheat. If you go into winter wheat, which is the main crop in Denmark, you have a protein content by 7.5%. You cannot bake a bread if it's only as a 7% protein content. So that's why the organic farmer has a main problem, that the protein content is too low for a decent baking quality. So that was my main task of making varieties suitable for baking quality in organic farming, that is increasing the protein content. That's a very simple job, and it is very simple. Of course, there are other things to consider than just this. Wheat competition, for example. There's a huge difference in wheat competition between these two varieties. They are sown on the same day, but there's a huge so we can easily also select for wheat competition. This picture was taken yesterday. That is sowing of wheat. Each label is a variety. So we were yesterday sowing 3,000 lines. It's not 3,000 different varieties, because some of them are in replicates. So it's maybe only 500 varieties. And we are testing, that's my favorite disease. It is common bunt, stinking smut, stinkbrand. It's a wonderful disease. Instead of a head, the spike, it just developed fungal spores. And they stink like rotten fish. And just a single infected plant in an area like this will make the grain smell like rotten fish. So it's really a wonderful, nasty, devastating disease. So I love this disease. And it's divided into, like corona and flu, and you can have different strains, and different varieties are infected by different strains. So therefore I infect each variety with 10 different strains of this fungal disease to see which variety is infected by which strain. This is really interesting. And then we make genetic markers, genetic fingerprints of each variety, and then we see if we can connect all these different genes with a genetic marker. Really funny. Okay, I think we will see. This is how it looks in the spring. Of course, this is a few years ago. Yeah, okay. Now, what I really would talk about is this landrace breeding, because we can do the same in grain. Cereals, wheat and barley and oat, they are self-pollinating. That's why I was a bit uncomfortable when Trine was making all this pollen, because I'm an introvert and self-pollinating. So the standard way of making breeding is that you take two varieties from this huge diversity we have in all the gene banks or in seed catalogs. You make a cross, and each cross there will be different offsprings. This is the F1 hybrids. And then you make selections. After inbreeding for 10 years, they inbreed. And then you make selections, and then you come out with one variety that is the best. Highest yielding, best quality, this is the best variety. And since it's self-pollinating, they are all identical. So one wheat variety in a field all plants are genetically identical. It's like clones. There's only one. This is, and in Northern Europe, we grow 4 or 5 different wheat varieties. So whether you in Germany or Sweden or wherever, it's the same variety we all grow, because everybody wants to grow the highest yielding. And there's only one that is highest yielding. So this is the normal way of making wheat. But the way we do it is that we cross, maybe not all of them, but most of them, the ones we like, the ones that I found in the bunt screening area. This is resistant, this is has a good wheat competition, and then we cross many of them. And then we make a bit of selection, and then we grow it all as a population. And then we leave it to Joseph or the nature or to let it compete with each other as a population. So therefore, in our wheat varieties, we have a higher genetic diversity, and it's grown as a landrace. So it's a kind of a modern variety, a modern landrace. So in order to have this high genetic diversity in the field. It's not diversity in terms of insects and flowers, but for wheat, it is a high genetic diversity. So we call it. Ja, endelig bare spørg. Altså endelig, jeg vil gerne afbrydes. Yes, it can be done in small scale, but there's a lot of handwork. Yes, yes. I still think there is a need for different. Variety. We don't call it really varieties, but population. We still need different population. I don't want to mix everything together. I want to mix those together with the same trait. So we have one population with purple seed, we have another population with blue seeds, we have another population with a good hard gluten structure for baking, we have another population with another gluten structure. So I still think we need diversity also in the product. But within each population, we also need genetic diversity. So if we all put it all together, it all becomes gray. And I still think we need, for the cuisine, we still need a diversity also in traits. And we also need plants, tall plants for low input conditions and short plants for high input conditions. So we still need a diversity. But yes, you can do it at home. Yes. This is how my field looks just before harvest. I have a very small combiner. There's a lot of plots to harvest. It's not so much about the size of the harvester, but I need to clean the combine harvester between each plot. So a normal combine harvester takes about 8 hours to clean, but this one is easier to clean. So. And this is some of the populations we have. You may have heard of Mariatoba. We just ate it in there. We haven't had the blue one, but there was also some blue wheat in it. Just to say that we have developed these different populations for different purposes. The Gurli is mainly for feed production or high yield condition. If a farmer is a dairy farmer, has a lot of nutrients, then he can grow this one. But a normal organic farmer will not have enough protein in this variety, so he will grow another variety. And we have these populations that I develop, or we also have some old varieties from gene bank that we multiply and maintain. And in order to have this in production, we have developed this Landsorten, which is an organization. I wouldn't say it's competing with Frøsamlerne, because Landsorten is more a commercial seed-saving organization. It's not a seed company. We're not selling seed, but we are organizing the farmers to produce their own seed. But farmers, they're even worse than seed savers. They mix it all up. And they don't use, in August, when the sun is shining, they are not spending 8 hours to clean their combine harvester. They drive and they harvest. So that means after a few fields, it's all mixed up. So I'm sorry to say, most farmers are not able to produce seed unless we have Landsorten to come and tell them, you have to do it like this, and we make control and we take samples and analyze it to say that it is safe and good. So therefore there is a need for some kind of organization. That's why I was standing up when Trine asked me if who were organizing seed. Yeah, that is actually the main part of Landsorten, that is organizing all this. We have the conservation varieties, which is quite simple. We can just register varieties as conservation varieties. There are now two ways of having material approved. You may in Frøsamlerne have heard about the seed legislation in EU. I've been interested in this topic for a long time. Louise is laughing. We had some problems some years ago because actually it's not legal. I mean, in order to sell seed in EU, you have to approve the variety. It must be listed in the EU catalog of seed, and it's expensive. For grains, it costs about 50,000 kroner just to apply for approval. And in order to have it approved, you need to do a lot of work with cleaning and things. So it will cost several 100,000 Danish kroner to have a approved variety, which is impossible for organic farming. It's simply too small. The standard seed company says that if a variety is grown on less than 100,000 hectares, it's not profitable to have it, then discard it. The Danish production of wheat for baking is 10,000 hectares. So it's impossible to have a commercial business on that basis. But we found some holes in the legislation. We have now, because the legislation doesn't cover research, but it doesn't define what is research. So I would say a trial, that is research, isn't it? So if a farmer wants to try something, then it's not farming, then it's a trial, then it's research, and then it's not covered by the seed legislation. So therefore, actually we have convinced the Danish Ministry of Agriculture, Landbrugsstyrelsen, we convinced them that this is actually relevant for us, because the chefs will not get new varieties unless we accept some kitchen garden, kindergarten for seed. So they have actually accepted that we can work. So I'm not happy. I'm not unhappy with the seed legislation anymore. I have been previously, but I think it actually works now. And they have opened for approving these heterogeneous material, and that is very cheap to have it approved as heterogeneous material, and we are allowed to do that. So in Landsorten, we work a lot with these legal issues to make sure that it is actually legal what the farmers are doing. Even though it says in the legislation that they are not allowed to, then we have actually made it happen anyway. We are planning the production. For example, the Mariatoba. We have this seed production, and we also, some people want to mill it. I think they should not mill it, they should use it for seed production. But if they if they use it all for seed production, then there is no milling, then there is no market, then the market stops. Can we then actually start it up again in 2 years? So therefore, we need to have a balance between what is marketed and what is goes into seed production. So there's a huge planning there. It's not so much in the big crops, but especially in the small crops. Maybe only 1 or 2 farmers are growing a spelt variety, and we have to make sure that at least some of it is saved for seed, so available for other farmers. We make this quality control, take samples from all seed lots, analyze it for seed-borne diseases and purity and things. And of course, we also select varieties. Some of them are actually coming from frøsamlerne. We are talking about especially legumes. We don't have any legumes in Landsorten at the moment, but maybe you could take some of frøsamlernes legumes to multiply them, because seed savers are extremely good at selecting, finding new varieties, maintaining varieties, but not very good at multiplying in a commercial scale. So therefore, I see a cooperation here. We have this organization, Original. You may not know it. It's a label for conservation varieties. It's not known very much by consumers, but retailers, they know it. So they want to, nowadays, companies are not only selling products, they also have to make a report about ESG, their environmental sustainability efforts, and they want to have some heritage varieties to show that they're actually thinking about it. So they are actually very interested in Original, and there we also select varieties for them. And then this breeding of new varieties, that's mainly my task. Nu er den gået død. Kan du, det er måske det sidste? Nej, det var det sidste. Okay. Well, actually,
kan du gentage spørgsmålet, så alle lige kan høre det?
Why? How can we do it when Mariatoba is not registered? But it is registered. It is registered as a heterogeneous material. So we are allowed to sell it unlimited in any quantity, and we are exporting that to England and Belgium, Holland, Sweden, Norway. So it's in commercial production. No, it's
du gentager lige, undskyld, jeg er lidt hurtig, langsom faktisk med den her.
We don't register all of them. No, maybe we should take this one. We discuss with the authorities when is it feasible to register. So we tell them how big is our production. And if the production is big, then they say, then you should register. And then we register it as organic heterogeneous material. That's a kind of an experimental, but we can register it as heterogeneous material, and then it's official. We need, it's kind of a certified production, so we need special labels to put it on the bags, and so that's in huge production. But other varieties are not registered yet because the production is so small that the authorities say, we don't really care. Call it research or something. So we have a very good relation with the authorities. So we take it case by case. Is it relevant to register or not?
Og så er flere spørgsmål. Velkomne. Nej, Emilie, det må du ikke, fordi du skal op og stå, og du skal sige, hvem du er, hvad du laver, for det er første gang, du siger noget her.
Og I må også gerne stille mere nørdede spørgsmål, fordi vi kan godt gå mere i detaljer.
No, jeg hedder Emilie. My name is Emily, and I'm a chef. And Anders, I really admire your work. Thank you for doing it. Do you ever consider flavor? And how do you develop flavor into all of these varieties that you keep breeding? How is that an important part of the work you do?
I think a lot about it. I don't do anything. Flavor in grain, yes. There are differences in flavor. But flavor in grain is, to be honest, I cannot taste the difference between two similar varieties. Maybe I can taste the difference between purple wheat and non-purple wheat, but that's a very simple trait. But the difference is 95% of the flavor is in the bran. That's where all the nutrients are. This is where the flavors are, and this is and when the grain come to the mill, they take the bran, throw it away, and give some white stuff that has the color of paper and a similar nutritious value and flavor. So therefore, most of the flavor is actually not something I can do about. It's the main differences in flavor is the farmer and the miller. The differences in breeding is not that big. I know there are differences, but I've never seen any research showing it. It's all there's a lot of difference in flavor from one seed lot to another, because when you harvest the grain, the starch is starch. But as soon as you have over mature grain, then the starch starts to degrade into sugar, and then a lot of flavor is developed. Also, if you harvest it a little early, then there's a lot of flavor. So therefore, it's very difficult to work with flavor in breeding, because it's actually not that much to do with breeding, in my opinion. I know that other people disagree, but this is my opinion. Yeah.
So when you breed,
Vi skal lige...
or all of these different varieties, then you only breed for how good they...
It's mainly the for the farmer and the baking quality, but the differences in taste is more like a secondary effect. That yes, we can see that Borgen tastes different than Petrus. Yes, we can see that. It's a difference. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. They are different, and I'm happy that there is a diversity. But I cannot say I'm not taking a good tasting variety and cross it with another good tasting variety. I'm not that advanced. No, sorry.
Ja, så skal vi herned. Det er lunt. Og du vil også godt rejse dig op og lige sige, hvor du er fra.
I'm Marcus, and I'm part of the Going to Seeds community. My question is, you're saying that wheat, for example, is self-pollinating. So how do you cross them then?
Tak.
Steve, hvad hedder en pincet? A tweezer, with tweezer and patience. Since it's a a head of wheat consists of spikelets. Within each spikelet, there's about 4 flowers. In each flower, there's a female flower and 3 male flowers, the anthers, pollen corn. So I take the tweezers and take all the about 100 anthers out of it, fjerner pollenkorn. So it's actually a castrated head. So there's no male here. It's only a female plant. And then I just take another plant from another variety that's still is intact, and then the pollen from there will cross. So that's very easy.
This is called traditional breeding in modern language.
Yes. Yes.
Josipa?
Yes, I'm still Josipa. I wanted to ask about the time of harvest, how it's done today and how it was done maybe in the older times, because I've heard something that there's different ripeness called morphological and physiological ripeness, and because of the machines today, we harvest when it's very, very dry, and before in the times you harvested and let them stand, like the grass. So is there a difference to your knowledge in terms of, for example, protein or nutrition in terms of harvest times? Because if it's very dry and you harvest.
Yeah, it is true that now we harvest with combined harvester, and we wait until the grain is dry. The grain will grow, it's grass, green plant, and then at maturity they wilter and die. And then we have this grain sitting on a on a dead straw. And that's an easy way to harvest it. Previously it was harvested premature and set into hypes, and that creates more flavor, certainly. There's much more, like maize. Yeah, mature maize is not very tasty, but if you eat it when you harvest sweet corn, yeah, there's a lot of taste. And it's the same with grain. There's much more taste if it is immature. But it's not very practical to harvest. Also, previously you could learn work with the land races that maybe not mature at the same time. But since you cut it when it's still immature, they can after mature. And with a combine harvester, you cannot work with a material that doesn't mature at the same time. So therefore, this is one of the reasons that we need more homogeneous material in order to facilitate the combined harvester. But I don't want to go back to the old system. I think
What about nutrition?
Nutrition, yes, we have this. I think the main issue about nutrition is the falling number. The falling number is an expression of how much starch has converted into sugar. And in all plants have germination inhibitors in the seed. Germination inhibitors prevent the starch from grading down to sugar, prevents the protein from turning into amino acids, because that's what the plant need for germination. They store it as protein and starch, and then during germination it will break down into sugar and amino acids. That's the same thing that happens in our digestion system, that when we eat it in the stomach, it will be digested into sugar and protein and amino acids, and then we can absorb it. So that means if you harvest your grain at the optimal time, it will have the optimal content of germination inhibitors. And that means also you have the optimal content of digestion inhibitors. So if you are eating raw grain, good grain with a high falling number, that means it's filled up with anti-nutrients, which is not very healthy. And this is why sourdough fermentation, long-term fermentation, is essential for digestion of grain, essential for digestion of any seed. That you have this, that you have them pre-germinated or in some way treated with water before you eat it. Should
And
never.
that also goes for the whole grains. If you eat
Yes.
as a cooked
Yeah.
whole grains, you
Yes.
should always
Yeah.
have them in water in at least 24 hours
Yeah.
before you cook them.
Yes. So because we have focused so much, did I talk about this falling number? It's just that you cannot make a sauce from sugar. No, you can make sauce from flour with starch. It's the starch that makes the sauce thick. So if you put the spoon in a pot with sauce, it will fall quickly to the bottom if it's full of sugar, and it falls slowly if it is with starch. So that's a falling number. How fast will the spoon fall to the bottom? So a high falling number means that the starch is intact. And that's essential also for baking quality, because the starch is what makes the bread keep the shape after baking. If that has turned into sugar, the bread will fall apart after baking. So we need a high falling number. And because bakers and millers and farmers have becoming so good at maintaining a good baking quality, it means also that it's filled up with anti-nutrients and not very healthy. So this, and we see an increase, the epidemic of gluten allergy. Now we're all gluten intolerant, aren't we? And that has, I think, not so much to do with plant breeding. It's mainly because the baking quality is too good, and we are lacking this long-term fermentation of bread. And that has something to do with the anti-nutrients in wheat.
Very important.
Yes. And if you have the time, we can talk
For
all about
hours.
it, for hours.
But you have a very nice article on it on the internet where you've written this on the theme of what this woman called your co-author.
I don't know. Okay.
Okay,
Ask
I have
ask
found that.
Trine, she will instruct me. Yeah.
Okay. So one last question for Anders. So thank you for giving us the I read in an article that the next one is called Flower Power. Next breed you're working on.
yes.
You've been working on it for 10 years, but it's
Yes,
not.
is there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Flower Power. Yeah. And you've been working on it for 10 years?
Yeah, it's actually a selection within popcorn, and we thought that popcorn is a good winter wheat, but some farmers thought that the protein content was too low, so therefore we made a special selection for to increase the protein content in flower power.
So be alert in a shop near you for my Toba and Flower Power and all these wonderful varieties of
Yeah, you should. Yes.
grains. Thank you very much, Anders.